Greetings friends. Thanks for stopping by for a visit. If you enjoy the video, please subscribe.
This happened a few years back. I was doing long-haul, mostly cross-country routes, the kind that take you through vast stretches of nothing. You know, the ones where the radio turns to static for hours, and the only sign of life is the occasional pair of headlights going the other way, miles apart. I was young, eager for the miles, the money. Didn't mind the solitude. Or so I thought. The route I was on took me across a long, desolate stretch of highway that ran between the borders of two large governmental territories. I don't want to say exactly where, but think big, empty spaces, lots of trees, not much else. It was notorious among drivers for being a dead zone. No signal, no towns for 100 miles either side, and prone to weird weather. Most guys tried to hit it during daylight, but schedules are schedules. Mine had me crossing it deep in the night. I remember the feeling. Utter blackness outside the sweep of my headlights. The kind of dark that feels like it's pressing in on the cab. The only sounds are the drone of the diesel engine, the hiss of the air brakes now and then, and the rhythmic thrum of the tires on asphalt. Hypnotic. Too hypnotic. I'd been driving for about 10 hours, with a short break a few states back. Coffee was wearing off. The dashboard lights were a dull green glow, comforting in a way, but also making the darkness outside seem even more absolute. My eyelids felt like they had lead weights attached. You fight it, you know? Slap your face, roll down the window for a blast of cold air, crank up whatever music you can find that hasn't dissolved into static. I was doing all of that. It must have been around 2 or 3 a.m. I was in that weird state where you're not quite asleep, but not fully awake either. Like your brain is running on low power mode. The white lines on the road were starting to blur together, stretching and warping. Standard fatigue stuff. I remember blinking hard, trying to refocus. That's when I saw it, or thought I saw it. Just a flicker at the edge of my headlights on the right shoulder of the road. Small, low to the ground. For a split second, I registered a shape, vaguely human-like, and then it was gone, swallowed by the darkness as I passed. My first thought? Deer, or a coyote. Common enough, but it hadn't moved like an animal. It had been upright. My brain, sluggish as it was, tried to process it. Too small for an adult, too still for an animal startled by a rig. Then the logical part, the part that was still trying to keep me safe on the road, chimed in. You're tired. Seeing things. Happens. And I almost accepted that. I really did. Shook my head, took a swig of lukewarm water from the bottle beside me, kept my eyes glued to the road ahead. The image, though, it kind of stuck. A small, upright shape. Like a child. No way, I told myself. Out here? Middle of nowhere? Middle of the night? Impossible. Kids don't just wander around on interterritorial highways at 3 a.m. It had to be a trick of a light, a bush, my eyes playing games. I've seen weirder things born of exhaustion. Shadows that dance, trees that look like figures. It's part of the job when you're pushing limits. I drove on for maybe another 30 seconds, the image fading, my rational mind starting to win. Just a figment. Then I glanced at my passenger side mirror. Habit. Always checking. And my blood went cold. Not just cold, it felt like it turned to slush. The air illuminated faintly by the red glow of my trailer lights receding into the distance was the reflection of a small figure, standing on the shoulder of the road, exactly where I thought I'd seen something. It wasn't a bush. It wasn't a shadow. It was small, and it was definitely standing there, unmoving. As my truck pulled further and further away, my heart started hammering against my ribs. This wasn't fatigue. This was real. There was someone, something, back there, and it looked tiny. Every instinct screamed at me. Danger. Wrong. Keep going. But another voice, the one that makes us human, I suppose, whispered something else. A kid? Alone out here? What if they're hurt? Lost? I fought with myself for a few seconds that stretched into an eternity. The image in the mirror was getting smaller, fainter. If I didn't act now, they'd be lost to the darkness again. God, the thought of leaving a child out there, if that's what it was, against my better judgment, against that primal urge to just floor it, I made a decision. I slowed the rig, the air brakes hissing like angry snakes. Pulled over to the shoulder, the truck groaning in protest. Put on my hazards, their rhythmic flashing cutting into the oppressive blackness. Then I did what you're never supposed to do with a full trailer on a narrow shoulder. I started to reverse, slowly, carefully, my eyes flicking between the mirrors, trying to keep the trailer straight, trying to relocate that tiny figure. The crunch of gravel under the tires sounded unnaturally loud. It took a minute, maybe two, but it felt like an hour. The red glow of my tail lights eventually washed over the spot again. And there it was, a kid. I stopped the truck so my cab was roughly alongside them, maybe 10 feet away. Switched on the high beams, hoping to get a better look, and also to make myself clearly visible as just a truck, not something else. The kid was small, really small. I guessed maybe 6, 7 years old. Hard to tell in the glare. They were just standing there, on the very edge of the gravel shoulder, right where the trees began. The woods pressed in close on this stretch of road, tall, dark pines and dense undergrowth that looked like a solid black wall just beyond the reach of my lights. The kid wasn't looking at me. They were facing sort of parallel to the road, just walking, slowly, like they were on a stroll, completely oblivious to the massive 18-wheeler that had just pulled up beside them. Engine rumbling, lights blazing. They were wearing what looked like pajamas. Thin, light-colored pajamas. In the chill of the night. No coat, no shoes that I could see. My mind reeled. This was wrong. So many levels of wrong. I killed the engine. The sudden silence was almost deafening, amplifying the crickets. The rustle of leaves in the woods from a breeze I couldn't feel in the cab. My heart was still thumping, a weird mix of fear and adrenaline and a dawning sense of responsibility. I rolled down the window. The night air hit me, cold and damp, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth. "Hey," I called out. My voice sounded hoarse, too loud in the quiet. "Hey, kid." No response. They just kept walking, one small, bare foot in front of the other, at a pace that was taking them absolutely nowhere fast. Their head was down slightly. I couldn't see their face properly. "Kid, are you okay?" I tried again, louder this time. Slowly, so slowly, the kid stopped. They didn't turn their head fully, just sort of angled at a fraction, enough that I could see a pale sliver of cheek in the spill of my headlights. Still not looking at me, still ignoring the multi-ton machine idling beside them. A prickle of unease ran down my spine. Not the normal kind of unease. This was deeper, colder. Animals act weird sometimes, but kids? A lost kid should be scared, relieved, something. This one was nothing. "What are you doing out here, all alone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, friendly, like you're supposed to with a scared kid, even though this one didn't seem scared at all. It's the middle of the night. Silence. Just the sound of their bare feet scuffing softly on the gravel as they took another step, then another. As if my presence was a minor inconvenience, a background noise they were choosing to ignore. This wasn't right. My internal alarm bells were clanging louder now. My hand hovered near the gear stick. Part of me wanted to slam it into drive and get the hell out of there. But the image of this tiny child, alone, possibly in shock. I couldn't just leave. Could I? "Where are your parents?" I pushed, my voice a bit sharper than I intended. "Are you lost?" Finally, the kids stopped walking completely. They turned their head, just a little more, still not looking directly at my cab, more towards the front of my truck, into the glare of the headlights. I could see their face a bit better now, pale, featureless in the harsh light, like a porcelain doll. Small, dark smudges that might have been eyes. No expression. None. Not fear, not sadness, not relief. Just blank. An unreadable slate. Then a voice. Small. Thin. Like the rustle of dry leaves. Lost. Just that one word. It hung in the air between us. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by a fresh wave of concern. Okay, lost. That's something I can deal with. Okay, kid. Lost is okay. We can fix lost. Where do you live? Where were you going? The kid finally, slowly, turned their head fully toward my cab. Towards me. I still couldn't make out much detail in their face. The angle, the light, something was obscuring it, keeping it in a sort of shadowy vagueness despite the headlights. But I could feel their gaze. It wasn't like a normal kid's look. There was a weight to it, an intensity that was deeply unsettling for such a small form. Home, the kid said, that same thin, reedy voice. Trying to get home. Right home. Where is home? I asked, leaning forward a bit, trying to project reassurance. Is it near here? Did you wander off from a campsite? A car. There were no campsites for miles. No broken down cars on the shoulder. I knew that. The kid didn't answer that question directly. Instead, they took a small step toward the truck. Then another. My hand tensed on the door handle, ready to open it, to offer. What? A ride? Shelter? I didn't know. It's cold out here, I said, stating the obvious. You should get in. We can get you warm, and I can call for help when we get to a spot with a signal. My CB was useless, just static. My phone had shown no service for the last hour. The kid stopped about 5 feet from my passenger door, still in that pale, thin, pajama-like outfit, barefoot on the sharp gravel. They should be shivering, crying. They were doing neither. Can you help me? The kid asked. The voice was still small, but there was a different inflection to it now. Less flat. A hint of something else. Pleading, maybe? Yeah, of course, I can help you, I said. That's why I stopped. Where are your parents? How did you get here? The kid tilted their head. A jerky, unnatural little movement. They're waiting. At home. Okay. And where's home? Which direction? I gestured vaguely up and down the empty highway. The kid didn't point down the road. They made a small, subtle gesture with their head, a little nod, towards the trees, towards the impenetrable darkness of the woods lining the highway. In there, the kid said. My stomach clenched. In the woods? Your home is in the woods. Lost, the kid repeated, as if that explained everything. Trying to find the path. It's dark. Yeah, it's very dark, I agreed, my eyes scanning the tree-line. It looked like a solid wall of black. No sign of any path, any habitation. Just dense, old-growth forest. The kind of place you could get lost in for days, even in daylight. Can you come out? The kid asked. Help me look? It's not far. I can't see it from here. Every rational thought in my head screamed, no. Get out of the truck? In the middle of nowhere, in the pitch dark, with this strange child who wanted me to go into those woods. No, absolutely not. But the kid looked so small, so vulnerable. If there was even a tiny chance they were telling the truth, that their house was just a little way in, and they were genuinely lost. I don't think that's a good idea, buddy, I said, trying to sound gentle. It's dangerous in there at night, for both of us. Best thing is for you to hop in here with me. We'll drive until we get a signal, and then we'll call the police or the rangers. They can help find your home properly. The kid just stood there, that blank, unreadable face fixed on me. But it's right there, they insisted, their voice a little more insistent now. Just a little way. I can almost see it. If you just step out, the light from your door would help. My skin was crawling. There was something profoundly wrong with this scenario. The way they were trying to coax me out. The lack of normal emotional response. The pajamas. The bare feet. The woods. I looked closer at the kid, trying to pierce that strange vagueness around their features. My headlights were bright, but it was like they absorbed the light rather than reflected it. Their eyes. I still couldn't really see their eyes. Just dark hollows. "I really think you should get in the truck," I said, my voice firmer now. "It's warmer in here. We can figure it out together." The kid took another step closer. They were almost at my running board now. "Please," they said. That reedy voice again. "My leg hurts. I can't walk much further. If you could just help me a little, just to the path." My internal conflict was raging. My trucker instincts, honed by years of seeing weird stuff and hearing weirder stories at truck stops, were blaring warnings. But the human part, the part that saw a child in distress, was still there, still arguing. I was tired. So damn tired. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. Maybe this was all some bizarre misunderstanding. I squinted, trying to see past the kid, towards the tree line they'd indicated. Was there a faint trail I was missing? A flicker of light deep in the woods? No, nothing. Just blackness. Solid, unyielding blackness. And then I saw it. It wasn't something I saw clearly at first. It was more like an anomaly, a disturbance in the darkness behind the kid. The kid was standing with their back mostly to the woods, facing my truck. Behind them, the darkness of the forest was absolute. Or it should have been. But there was something connected to them. Something that stretched from the small of their back, from under the thin pajama top, and disappeared into the deeper shadows of the trees. At first, I thought it was a trick of a light, a weird shadow cast by my headlights hitting them at an odd angle. Maybe a rope they were dragging? A piece of clothing snagged on a branch? I leaned forward, trying to get a clearer view. The kid was still talking, their voice a low, persistent murmur. "It's not far. Please, just help me. I'm so cold." But I wasn't really listening to the words anymore. I was focused on that thing behind them. It wasn't a rope. It wasn't a shadow. It was a tube. A long, dark, thick tube. It seemed to emerge directly from the kid's lower back, impossibly, seamlessly. It was dark matte, like a strip of the night itself given form, and it snaked away from a child, maybe 10-15 feet, before disappearing into the inky blackness between two thick pine trunks. It wasn't rigid. It seemed to have a slight, almost imperceptible flexibility, like a massive, sluggish umbilical cord made of shadow. It didn't reflect any light from my headlamps. It just absorbed it. My breath hitched to my throat. My blood, which had been cold before, now felt like it had frozen solid. This wasn't just wrong. This was impossible. Unnatural. The kid was still trying to coax me. "Are you going to help me? It's just there. You're so close." My voice, when I finally found it, was barely a whisper. I couldn't take my eyes off that appendage. "Kid, what is that?" "Behind you." The kid flinched. Not a big movement, just a tiny, almost imperceptible tightening of their small frame. Their head, which had been tilted pleadingly, straightened. The blankness on their face seemed to solidify. "What's what?" they asked, their voice suddenly devoid of that pleading tone. It was flat again, colder. That thing," I stammered, pointing with a shaking finger. "Coming out of your back. Going into the woods. What is that?" The kid didn't turn to look. They didn't need to. Their gaze, those dark, unseen eyes, bored into me. "It's nothing," they said. The voice was still small, but it had a new edge to it. A hardness. "You're seeing things. You're tired." They were using my own earlier rationalization against me. "No," I said, my voice gaining a tremor of conviction born of sheer terror. "No, I'm not. I see it. It's right there. It's connected to you." The kid was silent for a long moment. The only sound was the thumping of my own heart, so loud I was sure they could hear it. The crickets had stopped. The wind seemed to die down. An unnatural stillness fell over the scene. Then, the kid's face began to change. It wasn't a dramatic movie monster transformation. It was far more subtle and far more terrifying. The blankness didn't leave, but it sharpened. The pale skin seemed to tighten over the bones. The areas where the eyes were, those dark smudges, seemed to deepen, to become more shadowed, more intense. And a flicker of something ancient and utterly alien passed across their features. It wasn't human anger. It was something older, colder, and infinitely more patient, now strained to its limit. The air in my cab suddenly felt thick, heavy, hard to breathe. "Just come out of the truck," the kid said, and the voice, oh God, the voice. It wasn't the small, reedy voice of a child anymore. It was deeper, resonant, with a strange, grating undertone, like stones grinding together. It was coming from that small frame, but it was impossibly large, impossibly old. It vibrated in my chest. "Come out. Now." The command was absolute. My hand, which had been hovering near the gear stick, now gripped it like a lifeline. My other hand fumbled for the ignition key, which I'd stupidly left in. "What are you?" I choked out, staring at the monstrous thing playing dress-up in a child's form, at the dark, pulsating tube that was its anchor to the shadows. The kid's head tilted again, that jerky, unnatural movement. The expression on its face, if you could call it that, was one of pure, unadulterated annoyance, contempt, like I was a particularly stupid insect it had failed to swat. And then it spoke in that same terrible, resonant, grinding voice. The words it said are burned into my memory, colder than any winter night. "Why?" it rasped, the sound seeming to scrape the inside of my skull. "The hell are humans smarter now?" That was it. That one sentence. The sheer, cosmic frustration in it. The implication of past encounters, of easier prey. The utter alien nature of it. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I reacted. Primal fear, the kind that bypasses all higher brain function, took over. My hand twisted the key. The diesel engine roared back to life, a sudden, violent explosion of sound in the horrifying stillness. The kid, the thing, actually recoiled. A small, jerky step back. The expression, that awful, tightened, ancient look, intensified. I slammed the gear stick into drive. My foot stomped on the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, tires spinning on the gravel for a terrifying second before they bit into the asphalt. I didn't look at it. I couldn't. I stared straight ahead, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, the whole cab vibrating around me. The truck surged forward, gaining speed with agonizing slowness. For a horrible moment, I imagined that tube thing whipping out, trying to snag the trailer, to pull me back, to drag me into those woods. I imagined that small figure, with its ancient, terrible voice, somehow keeping pace. I risked a glance in my driver's side mirror. It was standing there, on the shoulder, unmoving. The headlights of my departing truck cast its small silhouette into sharp relief. And behind it, the dark tube was still visible, a thick, obscene cord snaking back into the endless night of the forest. It didn't seem to be retracting or moving. It just was. The thing didn't pursue. It just stood and watched me go. And that, somehow, was almost worse. The sheer confidence, the patience, like it knew there would be others. Or maybe it was just annoyed that this particular attempt had failed. I drove. I don't know for how long. I just drove. My foot was welded to the floor. The engine screamed. I watched the speedometer needle climb, far past any legal or safe limit for a rig that size, on a road that dark. I didn't care. The image of that thing, that child shape with its dark umbilical to the woods, and that voice, that awful grinding voice asking its horrifying question, was burned onto the inside of my eyelids. I must have driven for an hour, maybe more, at speed that should have got me killed or arrested before the adrenaline started to fade, replaced by a bone-deep, shaking exhaustion that was more profound than any fatigue I'd ever known. My hands were trembling so violently I could barely keep the wheel straight. Tears were streaming down my face, not from sadness, but from sheer, unadulterated terror and relief. When the first hint of dawn started to gray the eastern sky, and my phone finally beeped, indicating a single bar of service, I pulled over at the first wide spot I could find. I practically fell out of the cab, vomiting onto the gravel until there was nothing left but dry heaves. I sat there on the cold ground, shaking for a long time, watching the sun come up, trying to convince myself that it had been a dream, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But I knew it wasn't. The detail of that tube, the voice, the question. You don't hallucinate something that specific, that coherent, that utterly alien. I never reported it. Who would I report it to? What would I say? Officer, I saw a little kid who was actually an ancient cosmic horror tethered to the woods by a nightmare umbilical cord. And it got mad because I didn't want to be its dinner. They'd have locked me up, breathalyzed me, drug tested me, sent me for a psych eval. I finished that run on autopilot, dropped the load, drove my rig back to the yard, and I quit. I told them I was burned out, needed a break. They tried to convince me to stay, offer me different routes, more pay. I just couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that kid, that tube, those woods. Every dark road felt like a trap. I found a local job, something that keeps me home at night. I don't drive in remote areas anymore if I can help it, especially not at night. I still have nightmares. Sometimes when I'm very tired, driving home late from somewhere, I'll see a flicker at the edge of my vision on the side of the road, and my heart will try to beat its way out of my chest. I don't know what that thing was. An alien? A demon? Something else? Something that doesn't fit into our neat little categories? All I know is that it's out there, and it's patient, and it seems to have learned that its old tricks aren't as effective as they used to be. Why the hell are humans smarter now? That question haunts me. It implies they weren't always. It implies that, once upon a time, we were easier. That maybe, just maybe, people like me, tired and alone on dark roads, used to just step out of the cab when asked, and were never seen again. So, if you're ever driving one of those long, lonely stretches of road deep in the night, and you see something you can't explain, maybe just keep driving. Maybe being smarter now means knowing when not to stop. Knowing when to ignore that little voice telling you to help, because what's asking for help might not be what it seems. Stay safe out there. And for God's sake, stay on the well-lit roads.
I live in a place called Halgrave. You won't find it on most maps, and if you do, your GPS will freeze the second you cross the old stone bridge. It's a town of about 500 people, tucked in a valley no one drives through unless they're lost. There's one diner, one gas pump, and a library run by a woman who hasn't said a word since her nephew disappeared 10 years ago. Growing up here means you get used to silence and secrets, especially about the hill. Behind the town, there's a stretch of forest we call the thickets. Thick-trunked, black-bark trees packed so tight they blot out the sun even at noon. The local kids used to dare each other to touch the moss-covered milestone at the edge of the trail. No one ever stepped past it. No one smart, anyway. Past the forest, if you push deep enough, and people say not to, there's a hill. And on top of that hill stands Blackthorn Manor. We don't talk about the manor. Not really. We talk around it. Someone might say they saw a light on the ridge last night, or that the wind sounded strange, but no one ever says the name. It's just understood. The last time anyone admitted going near it was in 2013. Her name was Ellie Mayhew. She was 16. One night, she told her friend she was going to find out the truth about the house. She walked into the forest alone. They never found her. Her house has been boarded up since. I didn't plan to go looking for anything, but one night last summer I saw something. I just finished a shift at the diner and was walking home down Main Row, the stretch of town with the old community center, the boarded-up theater, and Connor's garage. He's the only one in town who can fix a carburetor without a manual. I cut past the trail like I always do, and then I saw it, a faint light, pale, golden, coming from the top floor of the mansion. I froze. The forest around me went dead quiet. Not just night quiet, wrong quiet. Then I heard a voice behind me. "Ruth, you see that?" It was Connor, pale, sweaty, staring at the same light. "That's not the moon," he said. "The moon's behind us." I nodded, barely breathing. The light blinked off. The forest exhaled. The next morning, the librarian nailed a note to the post office door. Children must stay inside after dark. The house remembers. That was all it said. I thought maybe it was a prank. Until I got the envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just black wax sealed with a symbol I didn't recognize. Inside, one sentence written in careful, perfect handwriting. It saw you too. That night, I dreamed of footsteps behind my bedroom wall. Slow, patient ones. They haven't stopped since. I haven't told anyone. Not Connor, not my dad, not even Mrs. Calloway. But something in the town has changed. Dogs are barking at nothing. The post office clock is stuck at 3:33, and people are acting like they're trying very hard not to remember something. I think the house is waking up again, and I think it wants someone. Part 2, the house sent something into town. I didn't open the envelope again. I burned it, watched the black wax curl and blister in a coffee can behind the shed. It didn't help. The next morning, my dad didn't come downstairs. He usually made coffee before I woke up. I went to his room. His bed was untouched, the covers too tight, too flat, like a stage prop. His shoes were by the door, but the door was still locked from the inside. He just wasn't there. I called the sheriff's station. It rang twice, then silence. Not a busy signal, not voicemail, just silence, like the phone had been picked up, but no one on the other end was breathing. I walked into town. It was foggy, but the sun was up. Fog doesn't hang like that in full daylight, not unless something's wrong. By the time I passed the old theater, I noticed it. The silence was too wide. No birds, no wind, no sound of tires or chatter, just my own footsteps on the sidewalk. Then I saw her, a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, in a white dress, barefoot, standing in front of the Calloway Library. Her hair was wet, dripping. "Are you Ruth?" she asked. I nodded stupidly. She smiled, but only with her mouth. Her eyes stayed dead. "Then it's your turn to go up the hill." I blinked and she was gone. I don't mean she ran. I mean she wasn't there anymore. Like someone had edited her out of the frame. I ran to Connor's garage. He was there, half under a car, headphones in. When I banged on the hood, he flinched hard enough to hit his head. "You saw her too?" I asked. He just stared. "You got the envelope, didn't you?" He had one too. His was still sealed. He hadn't dared open it. We agreed not to talk about it in the open. Something was listening. That night, I locked my bedroom door and pushed the dresser in front of it. The town felt wrong, like we were insects sealed in a jar and something had just started tapping the glass. At 3:33 a.m., not 3:32, not 3:34, my doorknob turned. Not fast, slow, deliberate, like it was making sure I heard it. Then the whisper came through the wood, a dry, breathless voice that didn't sound angry. It sounded patient. "You don't have to walk to the house. We can bring it to you." The next morning, the road out of town was gone. Not blocked gone. Just trees. Unbroken forest. As if no one had ever built a road at all. Connor tried to drive out. He came back an hour later. Car totaled. Face blank. He wouldn't speak. Just sat there muttering numbers that didn't make sense. And that night I dreamed of my dad, standing at the window of the manor, smiling. Behind him, something moved. It wore his skin, but it wasn't him.
The summer before I started college, I set my sights on hiking a portion of the Appalachian Trail. I had been planning it for years, daily hikes through the woods in my town, solo camping trips, collecting gear one piece at a time with what I could scrape together. When I told my dad, he insisted on coming with me. "For protection," he said. The irony is bitter now. I had protection. I had my bundle of sage and rosemary, coins, a lock of my hair, a sachet of salt, and iron nails I kept buried deep in my bag, passed down from my grandmother, who never once entered the forest without hers. I also had protection against the more mortal predators: bear spray, a knife, a taser. But no talisman in the world could prepare me for what we'd awaken. When I showed Dad my supplies, he laughed. "You mean your little bags of seasoning and trinkets?" Those won't save you from a bear or a murderer. They weren't meant to, I had muttered. Rule 1. Keep salt and iron on you. I'd learned that salt purifies and iron protects. A line of either can mean the difference between going home or being taken. The trailhead was too quiet when we arrived. Not peaceful, empty. The air felt wrong, like the forest was waiting for something. Watching. The leaves didn't rustle. The birds didn't sing. Dad didn't notice. He stomped along in brand new boots, whistling a tune off key. His cheerful noise died instantly after leaving his lips, swallowed by the woods. I stayed silent, tucked the iron nail under my shirt where it brushed my collarbone, cold against my skin. Rule 2. Don't whistle in the woods, my grandmother had said. It calls spirits to you. We hiked for hours. As the afternoon went by, the trees changed. The pines grew tighter, closer, wrong. Their trunks were too thick, bark gnarled and blackened like burned flesh. The air grew hot and humid, despite the elevation, wet, like a held breath. Light barely filtered through the thickening canopy. Even in the middle of the day, it was gray and dim. That's when I felt it. Not saw. Felt. Like something massive, ancient, and cold had stirred beneath the earth and opened one eye. I stopped walking. Dad noticed and turned back. You coming, Ellie? He shouted, holding a walking stick that he probably found somewhere on the side of the trail. He had just broken 2 rules in one go. Rule 3, don't speak your name too loud, it lets them know who you are. Rule 4, you never take things from the forest. Leave every stone, stick, and bone as you found it. I remembered. Some things belong to the forest. Some things guard it. Yeah, I lied, noticing that we had somehow wandered off the main trail. Hopefully not too far. I shouldn't have been blindly following my dad, knowing that he didn't know how to read trail markers. Rule 5. Stay out of hollers you don't know. Some places are thin, I'd read. Time folds. Trails change. You might walk forever and never leave. We kept going, trying to veer back towards the main trail. Then we saw it. Right in the center of the path. A pile of blackened stones encircling a bare patch of dirt, and in its center, a bundle of twigs bound tightly with hair. Human, by the look of it. Long, reddish-blonde strands matted together with something dark. The air stank. Copper, rot, and blood baked into the soil. Leave it, I said, my voice low and sharp. It's a warning. Dad knelt down and poked at it with his walking stick. Probably just some hiker's weird little voodoo project. Don't let it freak you out. And then he muttered superstitious nonsense. Under his breath, Dad, stop. Don't touch it. But it was too late. The stick scattered the stones. The wind shifted instantly sharp, cold, unnatural. It cut through the trees, though not a single branch moved. Then came the whistle. Not like Dad's rambling melody. It was a piercing, slow, almost human sound that climbed and fell in a way that made my teeth hurt. It came from nowhere. Everywhere. Behind us. Ahead. Dad stood up abruptly. Did you hear that? I grabbed his arm. Don't look back. Don't speak. Walk. Now. We walked. But now all signs of a trail were gone. The trees closed in behind us. We passed the same tree again and again. Its bark split in 3 deep, vertical slashes, too wide to be from a bear. How the fuck are we going in circles? Dad barked. We've been walking straight the whole time. A second whistle cut through the air, closer this time. Run! I screamed. We ran. Branches tore at us, a fog suddenly descending and obscuring our vision. Something moved through the trees with us, long-limbed, unnaturally fast. I caught glimpses. A shape with too many joints. A body that bent the wrong way. A face that shimmered and changed, wearing my face. Then his. Then neither. Rule 6. That's not a deer. My grandmother had sat me down, a grave expression on her face. If it walks like a deer, but the joints are wrong, if it looks at you like it knows you, if it stands on 2 legs, run. Don't scream. Don't look back. Looking back is an invitation to follow. We didn't stop running until night fell and the thing was no longer behind us. Dad collapsed onto a log, panting and pale. "I think we're lost," he whispered. "You think?" I hissed, already digging into my pack for the salt. "We should set up camp," I said. "No way we're finding a way out in the dark." He didn't move. Just sat there, shivering. "Ellie, that thing. It looked like a deer but it wasn't. It stood like a man. And its face. My God, its face," he trailed off. "You shouldn't have touched the stones." My voice was flat. "Help me with the fire." Dinner was tasteless. Quiet. I didn't even bother to finish my food. I poured a ring of salt around our camp and placed iron nails at each corner. It was all I could do. I woke to absolute darkness. The fire was out. The forest had gone still. Deadly quiet, like a killer sneaking up on a sleeping victim. Then, I heard it. "Dad. Dad, help me." My voice. But not. Off pitch, like a recording played at the wrong speed. The cadence all wrong, like someone trying to speak a language they didn't understand. I froze in fear, my heart pounding out of my chest. Dad was already out of his tent, stumbling toward the sound. "Ellie, where are you?" he shouted. I burst from my tent and grabbed his arm. "That's not me. I'm right here." He jumped and screamed in alarm and then turned to me, shaking. "Then who the fuck is that? Listen." We stood in silence. Then, "Dad, I'm scared. Please help me." Closer. And closer. The underbrush rustled just past the tree line. I turned slowly. Something stood just beyond the edge of camp. Glowing eyes. Not animal eyes. Intelligent. Patient. Watching. Rule 7. If you see glowing eyes, run. More rustling. More eyes. Back to camp. Now. I whispered. We scrambled back. I dumped the rest of the salt around the fire pit in a frantic circle, hands shaking as I struggled to get the flames going again. From the trees, it came again. "Dad. Ellie. Help me. Help." Voices overlapped, changed, twisted into gurgling laughter. More glowing eyes emerged. 5, 6, maybe a dozen. All too high off the ground, blinking out and reappearing in different spots like whatever they belonged to didn't walk, but crawled. We huddled by the fire. I threw sage into the flames and it hissed and sparked. Some of the eyes blinked, some just stared. Then one of the voices whispered, from right outside the edge of the firelight, "You shouldn't have touched it." The voices kept circling the camp. Some cried. Some laughed. Some whispered things I couldn't understand, not in English, not in any language people were meant to know. The sounds grated at my eardrums and I covered my ears. Dad sat stiff and pale beside me, eyes wide, clenching the iron nail I'd forced into his palm earlier. He looked like he wanted to scream but couldn't open his mouth. Like something might crawl in if he did. I knew we couldn't sleep. We couldn't even blink for too long. We waited, the fire our only defense. My hand hovered near the salt pouch, though it was nearly empty now. Something flickered at the edge of the flames. Not in the shadows, inside the fire itself. A face. Not a reflection. A face. Watching. Smiling. Hungry. "This isn't just a haunting," I whispered. "It's a feeding ground." The forest had sealed us in. It wanted stories. Memories. Faces. Flesh. and we had trespassed. We had touched what was sacred, broken the old laws. Sometime past midnight, the fire burned low, and that's when the laughing stopped, replaced by another sound. Footsteps. Right at the edge of the salt. Heavy. Human. Then, Ellie, you always did love the woods. I froze. That voice, it was my mom's. She died when I was 8. She'd been buried in the churchyard 3 towns over, her lungs filled with pneumonia and prayers. I hadn't heard her voice in nearly a decade, but I knew it instantly. I turned. I had to. Something stood just outside the salt line. It looked like her. The right height. Same dress from the funeral photo on our mantel. But the face, off. Melted. Smiling too wide. Eyes too big and glassy. It didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Rule 8. If you hear your name, don't answer. This is one of the most important rules. No matter how familiar the voice is, no matter how sweetly it calls, it isn't who you think it is. Behind it, something larger stirred in the trees. Something tall enough to brush the lowest branches. Antlers scraped bark as it moved, but it didn't look like a deer. It looked like something wearing a deer. Dad was whimpering now. "This is my fault," he whispered. "This is my fault." I didn't disagree. I looked back to the figure of Mom. It leaned forward. One bare foot tested the edge of the salt. The tips of her toes blackened instantly when they crossed the line and cracked, crumbled like burnt paper. She hissed and withdrew. Good. The salt held, but I didn't know how long it would last. I didn't know what else to do. So I did the only thing left. I asked for help. I pulled the last of my offerings from my pack, 3 small items wrapped in cloth, a coin, a piece of bread, and a strand of my own hair. I walked to the center of camp, knees shaking, and placed them down carefully on a flat stone by the fire. Then I whispered the oldest words I knew. Words my grandmother taught me when I was barely old enough to speak. For those who walked before, for those who guard the green, we mean no harm, let us go unseen. Rule 9. Leave offerings if you must pass sacred ground. A coin. A sweet. A bit of bread. The old ones watch. Be polite. Be grateful. Do not speak their names. The forest shuddered. The wind roared suddenly through the trees, though the leaves didn't move. A deep groan echoed beneath the earth, like old roots pulling themselves free. The figures at the edge of the salt? Gone. The eyes in the trees? Vanished. Even the fire quieted. The woods fell deathly silent, not safe, not empty, but still. Like something ancient had just turned its head away, deciding, for now, to let us go. The sun was beginning to rise. "Now," I said, grabbing Dad by the wrist. "We go now. Don't speak. Don't look back. We didn't pack anything. We didn't need to. Anything we left behind belonged to the forest now." I followed a path that hadn't been there before. A trail of crushed ferns and moss, lit faintly by a silvery glow filtering through the canopy. A deer path, but not a real one. A gift. A chance. We walked. When the sun rose fully, we found ourselves stumbling out of the tree line, back at the gravel parking lot near the trailhead. Our car was still there, covered in leaves. We didn't speak until we were 3 towns away. Dad drove like he'd just been let out of prison. Hands white-knuckled. Eyes wide. Eventually, he looked at me and said, "You said you had protection." "I did," I said. "And it worked?" he asked, nervously. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure it had. Because sometimes the forest lets you leave and sometimes it just follows you home.
I received the first message 3 days ago. I was on my break at work,
and I got a text notification. It was odd. It was from an unknown number. Normally, I ignored those sorts of messages. Spammers and the like usually showed up with those types of auto texts. But this one was different. It was so strange because no number showed up at all, just the message. Hide and seek. I thought someone might have the wrong number for a friend they were trying to get in touch with to play a game apparently, so I responded, "Think you have the wrong number. Not sure who you are trying to reach, but they are not here." I went about the rest of my workday and was just wrapping things up. When I pulled my phone from my bag, I saw I had another text waiting for me, same number or lack of number. It was just another blank line where a number should display, and the message, hide and seek. I was confused and slightly annoyed, so I responded again. Like I said before, I think you have the wrong number. Who is this? Who are you trying to get a hold of to play hide and seek? I waited, staring at the screen for a minute, and I was about to put it away when I saw a response. You, hide and seek? My patience had reached its limit, and I figured if they would not answer then, I would just block the non-existent number and hope it would work. Despite the lack of a visible number, the option on the message thread still presented itself, so I was relieved when the weird conversation vanished. I got in my car and started to drive home. I got another notification as I got on the road and used my car's text-to-speech to read it to me. It was Mike, my roommate. He was asking me to pick up more beer from the store, since he had apparently finished off what we had left. I groaned at the message and the fact that I was always the one to buy it for us. It was getting old, but I needed a drink after the night I had, so I sent him a message back saying, "I can this time, but if you're going to keep drinking everything we have, then you better start paying for it." I stopped by a nearby gas station close to our apartment and grabbed a case of Miller and continued home. As soon as I got back in the car, I received another text. I was getting annoyed already since I figured it was Mike complaining about being out of something else. But instead, as the text-to-speech read out the message, I knew it was something else. Seek, drink. It made sense now, and I immediately called Mike. He answered after several rings and sounded stoned. "Hey man, what's up? Did you grab the beer?" "Yeah, I did. Are you messing with me? How are you sending those messages? When I call you, I can see your number, but not when you sent that weird text. What kind of app are you using? Also, what is the point? I am not home, yet I can't play hide and seek. Never mind that I'm not 5 years old. The seek drink thing was a bit of a giveaway for whatever weird game you were playing." There was a brief pause, and he responded, "Not sure what you mean, man. I didn't send anything like that. Weird. Who wants to play hide and seek? Anyway, get home, man. My buzz is fading." He hung up on me, and I was even more confused. If he had not sent the message, who did? I drove home, feeling a little on edge. When I got back inside, Mike greeted me at the door. Of course, by greeted, I mean he took the case of beer and walked to the fridge, removed 2, and sat back down on the couch. "Nice to see you too." I mumbled under my breath. I wanted to ask again about the weird message, but I just shrugged and grabbed a drink for myself and lumbered to my room. I was tired, so I decided to call it an early night. When I stepped into my room, my phone buzzed, and I saw another text from no number. Almost time, hide, or seek. I was getting creeped out at that point. I did not know how the messages kept getting through after blocking it. I decided to respond again. "Stop messaging me. I do not know who this is, and I do not want to play. Leave me alone." I hit send and tried blocking it again. This time I turned my phone off, for good measure. I tried to settle down and just go to sleep. I managed to nod off for a bit, but after a while I heard a knock on my door. I jolted up and heard the slurring voice of Mike. "Hey man, I didn't know what the hell, but I think someone is trying to get a hold of you. I just got a trippy message, and it sounded like what you were talking about earlier. Check it out." I rushed to the door and saw Mike looking at his phone in a confused stupor. I grabbed it from him and looked at the message. Last chance, hide, or seek. My heart sank, and I felt a wave of panic rising in my chest. I asked Mike, "When did you get this?" He shrugged his shoulders. "A while ago, man. I don't remember exactly." I was not looking at my phone. What's going on? I stepped back into my room and turned my own phone back on. Sure enough, I had a missed message. "Okay, you, hide. I stared at the words in mounting fear. I had no idea what to do, but I felt suddenly exposed. I considered calling the police, but I did not know what I would tell them. Nothing had happened, only a creepy text thread. Yet something felt wrong, like something bad was about to happen. I looked over at Mike, and he looked confused and a bit paranoid as well. Before I could try and explain things, the lights went out. At first, I thought it might be a power outage. Then I heard the slow creaking sound of the front door opening, despite being sure I had locked it when I got home. Terror gripped me, and I knew something was very wrong. I crouched down in the dark and whispered to Mike the only thing I could think to say: hide. I crawled on my floor and under my bed. I was about to call 911 when my phone suddenly died as well. It was on one moment and then just lost power, despite having over half a charge left. I put the useless device in my pocket and tried to see if there was anything I could use as a light source. I froze and thought better about moving when I heard a strange shuffling sound. Then heavy footsteps, much heavier than Mike's. I noticed the temperature in the room had dropped suddenly, and it felt like it was freezing. As the footsteps resounded and moved closer, I smelled a fetid tinge in the air as well, like something rotten. I crawled as far back and huddled up as small as I could make myself under the bed and held my breath. I heard my closet door gently shutting and thought it might be Mike hiding in there. Then the heavy footsteps picked up the pace. I suddenly realized if I could hear the door closing, whatever the hell was in here with us could hear it too. I considered calling out to Mike to move, but fear froze my voice. The heavy footsteps were in the room now. Despite my efforts to try and see what stalked us, I could not make anything out. I sat there, silent and immobile, holding my breath and waiting. After several long moments, I thought we might be safe. Then I heard the door to the closet break and shatter. Then Mike screamed, a haunting and nightmare-inducing shriek. Something had found him. The cry of terror was suddenly silenced. I did not hear anything violent, just the scream and then utter silence. I had no idea what the hell had just happened. For a long while I sat there paralyzed with fear, until finally the light came back on. When I summoned the courage to creep out from under the bed and see what had happened, I was shocked when laying on the ground was the shattered remains of my closet door. Despite the ruin of the door, there were no traces of anyone or anything else. Mike had vanished. I slowly called out, louder and more emboldened as I moved into the hall where the light was on again. No one responded. No one else was there. I stumbled through the apartment searching for my roommate, but he was gone. Worse still, I had no idea just where the hell he had gone. No trace of Mike has shown up in the last couple days since it happened. I don't know if anything will. I think he can finally be declared missing, but I don't know if it will do any good. It was impossible, but whatever had broken into our place had found him, and now he was missing. He had lost hide and seek, and that thing, whatever it was, took him away. The entire nightmare is unbelievable, yet even now as I write about my friend's impossible disappearance, I am shocked when I receive another text. Hide and seek. I don't know what to do. I don't know what this is. Maybe I should respond again. A different way this time. Maybe it might help. Might keep me safe from whatever or whoever is doing this. Perhaps I can find out. My reply is one word: seek.
"What crime have you committed?" I asked. "None," she choked out, lungs recovering from her dash into the station. I frowned from behind the counter, readying myself for one of those nights, but it would be like no other night of my life. "Then why should I arrest you, ma'am?" The squirrely woman, catching her breath with hands against her knees, cranked her neck backwards so sharply that the joint popped. "Because," she said, taking a big inhale, "we're all in danger." Then her eyes began to ping frenetically between the station's entrance and me. I leant my elbows a little more deeply into the counter, pushing forwards to take a better peek at the building's automatic doors. There was nothing beyond the glass panes but the black of night and tarmac and silhouetted trees. "Is somebody following you?" I asked. She shook her bobblehead, making her neck pop another couple of times. I winced a little at the woman's frailty. She was slinging her skull around so violently that I started to wonder whether she wanted to launch it free. Pitch the damn thing for 6. "No, I'm just checking," she whispered, coming closer. "That we're alone. Now, I'm an officer of the law." I faced men and women with twice and thrice the stature of this meek, frightened woman, so I don't know quite how to explain how or why I felt such terror in that moment. I was chilled by the woman's breath, or the words carried on it. "There are 3 other officers at the station tonight," I croaked, before clearing my throat. "We're not alone. Will those doors count?" she asked, shivering as she eyed the glass entrance again. "Count in what way?" I replied. "I need the smallest indoor space possible," she said. "He told me that I won't be able to exit a room, or a building, or a prison without spoken approval. He said I'd need permission to leave." "Who told you that?" I asked, befuddled. "I don't understand, ma'am. Explain what's happening. Do I have to do something criminal?" the woman asked, shuddering. "You won't just arrest me?" "That's generally how it works," I replied. "I'm just a little concerned about why you want to be locked away this evening." "Well, morning. I assume it has something to do with keeping yourself safe by getting off the street, given that you say you're in danger. However, jail cells aren't hotel rooms, so—" "I don't need to protect myself," she interjected with a hiss, wild eyes locking onto mine. "I need to protect all of you." "What's happening out here, Thatcher?" Officer Bowen asked as she emerged from the office behind me. I tried my damnedest not to gulp, but the unnerving woman was making it difficult for me. "This lady is asking to be arrested, but she says she hasn't committed a crime." Officer Bowen offered me a raised eyebrow, then put her hands on her hips as she looked at the woman. "What's your name, love?" "Tamsin," she said. "Please, will one of you lock me up? I need to be locked up. Something bad's about to happen." "What's about to happen, Tamsin?" asked Officer Bowen. "I don't know," the woman blubbered, placing her face in her hands. "It's inside me." Something about those words, and her tone of voice, instilled me with fear beyond anything words could describe, for it was a fear not of this world. Officer Bowen, on the other hand, seemed unamused. She leant towards my ear and whispered, "I think we need to get this lady some psychiatric help. She might be in danger," I whispered back as Tamsin continued to cry. "She might be," Officer Bowen agreed. "But that's for a healthcare professional to decide, don't you think? Not 2 police officers at 3 o'clock in the morning." I nodded, then spoke louder. "Tamsin, I'm going to leave you with Officer Bowen for a second whilst I make a call in the office." "Okay." Tamsin shot her head up from her hands as I rose from the swivel chair. "No, please. Just arrest me. There isn't time for any of this." "I need you to relax, Tamsin," Bowen said as I started to walk towards the office. "We're going to help you, okay? We're going to figure out what's happening. Together." I shut the office door behind me, then made the call. The idea was to avoid potentially upsetting or aggravating the distressed civilian. Bowen and I had no idea how she would react to the arrival of a mental health specialist, so it seemed best to keep that information to ourselves. The office overlooked the main entrance through a horizontal one-way window, so I watched Bowen and Tamsin talk whilst the phone rang. And when I made it through to a specialist, I explained the whole situation to her. She said that Tamsin was in need of a proper health assessment. "I know it's late," I said, "so I'm happy to escort her to the hospital." And then came a voice not quite her own. "No, we'll escort you all." Before I managed to wrap my head around my unease at her sudden shift in vocal timbre, I clocked Tamsin smiling at me from the other side of the one-way window. She shouldn't have been able to see me, but I knew, somehow, that she could. And that filled me with terror. The grin on her face might have a thing to do with it too. Then the lights in the station cut out. And that came with a sharper pang of terror. The pain persisted afterwards, leaving me sitting in the dark, phone screen lighting my face, with an invisible blade lodged stubbornly between 2 bars of my rib cage. With the phone in my far from rigid hand, I rushed back out into the darkened area behind the counter, but Officer Bowen wasn't there, and when I shone my phone's torch beyond the counter, Tamsin wasn't there either. "Hello!" yelled a voice from down the corridor as fear started to grip me more tightly. A torch light bounced down a distant corridor, beyond the counter, painting the walls in light, offering only a slight reprieve from the suffocating darkness. Then came Officer Harling into the entryway. "Oh, Thatcher, thank God someone's here," he sighed, shining the torch beam onto me. "Looks like we've had a power cut." "There was a woman," I whispered, leaning against the counter once again, this time, for emotional support. I was terrified, and I still wasn't quite sure why. "She's gone now." "Bowen's gone too." "Ha!" Harling asked, not catching my drift. "Gone? I don't know." "Where's Rodman?" I asked. Harling shrugged. "You're the first person I found. Maybe we should check the fuse box, or call." He was interrupted by screaming, the voices of a man and a woman, from deeper within the station. "Bowen," I whispered. "Rodman," he added. I ran out from behind the counter and joined Officer Harling as we ran down a hallway that led into the heart of the station, desperate to locate the cries of our two fellow officers on the late-night shift with us. "This is Officer Harling," he panted as we ran down the corridor. "Requesting backup. Power cut at the station, and potential disturbance." "Roger," came a garbled voice from the other end of his radio. We burst through double doors and found ourselves in the station's break room. There, we witnessed a horror I will never forget. Officer Bowen and Officer Rodman were both lying on one of the tables, sawn neatly in half a little above each of their pelvic areas. The light of Harling's torch caught the sheen of the blood, and the table's laminated plastic top, and the whites of the victims' eyes. Their mouths hung open in the screams they had unleashed during those final seconds of life. I hoped, and still hope, their deaths were swift and relatively painless, but their expressions told another horrifying story, one that left me paralyzed in fear, vocal cords unable to expel a sound. Harling, on the other hand, screamed and rushed towards our severed officers, dropping his torch to the floor as he ran, plunging us back into darkness. I'd seen something for a moment at the back of the room. "Harling, pick the torch up," I begged, rummaging in my pocket for my phone. "They're gone," Harling sobbed. No longer the sturdy officer of the law I had known for 5 years, but a weeping mess. "Pick it up now, Harling," I insisted. I was a mess too, a jittery, terrified one. It wasn't sturdiness that kept me awake and alert. Wasn't my duty to the law. I need Harling to pick up his torch because we weren't alone in that room. There came the slaps of flesh against the floor, and I hurriedly activated my phone's torch. Harling was gone. "Hello," I wheezed feebly, casting the torch around the room. "Whoever's in here, reinforcements are on the way, so—" "Roger," crackled a distorted voice from some unseen radio. "We'll escort you all." My stomach dropped as I realized that Harling's call hadn't made it through to anyone. That voice, inhuman and indistinct, did not belong to anyone or anything that wanted to help. It belonged to the voice I'd heard when I called the mental health care professional. There came more slaps from behind me. Only a few. And when I spun my torch around, I expected to find nothing there once again. So, I screamed when I saw her. Tamsin. Only, she had changed. She showed only the whites of her eyes, rolling them ever deeper into the back of her head, and her mouth was impossible. It spanned the breadth of her face and then some. It had opened beyond human limits. And, to add to that hellishness, it revealed not human teeth, but incisors of obscene length, narrow width. Each tip tapered off to the finest point, which dripped with blood. And even the canines and molars to the sides were unthinkably sharp, unthinkably capable of cleaving a creature neatly down its center. "Do you want me to stay, officer?" The thing cooed, as if playing with its food. Then it, charged towards me, and I screamed at a volume louder than my lungs were built to accommodate. Screamed as I braced for death. Screamed, "No! Time feels a little hazy between that moment, which I expected to be my last, and the moment at which the responding officers found me. They said they'd arrived in 20 minutes, but it may as well have been hours, or perhaps only seconds. But she was gone when they got there and returned power to the building. I was interrogated about the demise of my fellow officers, including the disappearance of Officer Harling, who is a suspect in the case, along with Tamsin, the mystery woman visible on CCTV footage before the blackout. The discrepancy between your story and the truth is curious, said one interviewer. What discrepancy? I asked. Well, the power to the building was undoubtedly cut, he explained. Yet, the automatic doors were standing open when backup officers arrived at the station. I felt my skin pale.
Thanks for watching. If you want to hear more stories like these, please like and subscribe.